differently. So I saw that more in terms of modern Hebrew being more Sephardic.
Yes. So they made a choice in Israel to go with Sephardic Hebrew. And the first congregation that I was at was Emmanuel with Rabbi Herman Schulman. And he kept Ashkenazi Hebrew there until the 90s. And I remember, and my rabbi set me up, I wanted to change. We read in Ashkenazi Hebrew in the sanctuary, and I taught Sephardic Hebrew in the Hebrew school. And I went to the ritual committee and I said, please, can't you do Sephardic Hebrew at services? And he did an impassioned plea. I almost started Ashkenazi Hebrew in the school. He was so passionate about it. But obviously, all congregations now in Israel use Sephardic Hebrew. So you can understand it, but the difference and of course the things that that the most strident difference is in Kaddish. Yid Gadal v'Yid Kadash is Sephardic. Yis Gadal v'Yis Kadash is Ashkenazi. Shabbos, Shabbat, yeah.
And also they do Adonai instead of Adonai.
Adonai, it's an O and a, yeah. So, and now the people who have that kind of accent are the Haredi, the ultra Orthodox, and you can tell immediately. Elaine.
And getting back to the story, what did that long sex scene really have to do with the story? It was, I agree with you, it was two separate stories. I mean, I understand that she was happy from the meetings and overjoyed, but they were many pages and a lot of detail.
Well, it was only, it was a short story. All right, wait. Izzy, then Ellen, but take and hold the microphone super close to your mouth. Oh, wait, Sandy's first, then Izzy.
Going back to Israel.
Yes.
I have to tell you two personal things. One, when things started to change in Israel really nicely, was when a lot of the girls were now going into the army. And Ashkenazi boys were coming home with Sephardic brides. I saw so much of this in the 70s and the 80s. You saw guys who were definitely looked like us, talked like us, and he brought the darker skin, very dainty, beautiful girls, Yemenite girls home to mother. And there are a lot of marriages like that. Actually, my daughter married a Sephardic there. She met him in the Air Force, and his mother was from Iran and his father from Turkey. And we are like night and day. And she let me know before the wedding that all the problems in Israel were because of the Ashkenazi. That's how Sephardic she was. The second thing was, I learned this too when I was very new there and very shy. I'd be getting on a bus in Tel Aviv, and I'm very tall, 6 feet, and I don't look like most Israelis, and certainly not like the Sephardi. You'd be standing in line for the next bus, and all of a sudden, the bus would come, and you feel these elbows in you, and these little Sephardic women would push ahead of you, and I mean, they beat you up if they had to get ahead of you. And I was like, what?
That's true.
I was like, I was in tears once. Once a Sephardic man did this to me, and I was like in shock. You know what happened? I learned to do it back.
Yeah, you did.
It took me about 4 or 5 years there, and I learned to make it. I had to do the same thing, to be ready for them. And when that arm came out, I just was first. If I was in line first, I was going to be first. But that's what it's like in Israel. I love this story. I have 2 things to say. First of all, I was thinking about the really good
Yeah, Merle's not there.
part of Esperanto.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. that the good part of Esperanto would bring everybody, all the languages together. But then it would negate all the individual culture of each country. In other words, if the French spoke Esperanto, it would just be, they would lose their identity.
Right.
Okay, that's the first. The second thing is that the romantic part and the Esperanto had a direct connection because it was all about communication. And I think that he did not communicate with her his feelings. He was so naive and he was so distant, and she was just waiting for him to make a move, and he didn't. She just had it. So he wasn't communicating. He was very naive. They had dated for all these years when I realized at the beginning, and he had never made a move with any single part. And she had just been absolutely disgusted.
Yeah.
And I think it was, she'd just been frustrated and waiting. And so she kind of punished him at the first by going into first class without third class. And then she led the way, but they had been dating for such a long time. But the whole story was about communication, right? About Esperanto being communication for everybody. These two people never communicated. And I just thought that was the whole,
So tied
to me,
Yeah.
tied the two stories
Communication ties the two stories together.
together. They're not communicating and they're communicating.
I think that's, yeah. Thank you, Izzy. Alan, did you have a? Right there.
I'm still intrigued with the fact that this is from a book. The narrator, who's the main character, who's the naive idiot, whatever, it's taken so long, and I love your explanation. I'm curious about him because we don't really know as much about him. He's telling us about everybody else, and yet he's behaving so naively, whatever you want to call it. He's insecure. I think he's expressing all his insecurities with her, about her. And then I agree with you at the end, it's almost her that has to, make the move. And then he said, and doesn't he say something in there about how he perceived that she needed a post-marriage, and that's finally.
Yeah. So I would caution you not to look at this through the eyes of a 2023. This novel takes place long before the sexual revolution. You say he's naive. I think he was just like everybody else. What do they know? There's no internet. There's no nothing. No. He only learned sex from his father. Wait, you got to have the microphone because they can't hear you.
I remember my mother giving me a book about rabbits. Rabbits. And
Do you have that book?
no,
That would be priceless. If you gave your grandchildren a book on rabbits.
my grandchildren learned thoroughly. So I remember I was very large, very tall, and started menstruating very, very early. And I remember this book about rabbits jumping and maybe rabbits having sex. I don't know. And I still didn't know. And I got married at 18. How smart do you think I was? Okay, today everybody knows everything. And I think some of what we all do is we internalize the stories from the books into our lives today. And it's so very different. Life is 1,000 degrees different than what it was in these books.
Yeah. Joyce, there's the microphone.
But how many of us learn anything from our parents? We learn only from our parents.
No.
We learn from our friends.
Yeah.
Or from reading. But back in the, late 1800s, early 1900s, the Kama Sutra wasn't available to us. We had to learn from word of mouth.
Yeah.
And definitely from friends. Our grandkids, I know probably my kids learned from riding a school bus or,
No, they learn from the internet, and that is the thing that we have to be very watchful and know about. I taught confirmation for many, many years. When I first started confirmation, there was no internet. And I did a whole thing on sacred relationships and that, your body is Kiddusha, it's holy, and on and on. When I taught it later on, after the internet, you have to revamp. And I had a favorite lesson about who is a woman and who is a man, and Eshet Chayil, woman of valor, and Mi Ha'ish, who is a man. You can't teach that anymore because you have non-binary kids in the classroom. So it is just we're living in a different world, and we have to be. Lynn, Marcia, Sandy.
I think Merle was ahead of me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Merle, go ahead.
Just very quickly, what I read was that his father failed him really as a father. And that's why he had joined this movement with the Esperantists, because he really admired Dr. Zamenhof. And also that his father had tried to arrange a marriage for him when he was only 13, and that he had run away from this father for this reason. And also that his father had talked to him about intimacy, but only through the scriptures, things that were in the Bible. So he knew nothing.
Right. Lynn.
So the whole question is, even if we did speak the same language, do we ever speak the same language? I mean, talk about communication. The only place where you see people really getting along is in those last several chapters, and they didn't talk a lot. They communicated through emotional reactions to each other. So the question in all of this is, how are people going to get together? How are we going to create unity? And it seems to be the answer is in those last few pages of the story, where there is a communication of feeling. I don't know, when you meet new people, don't you have a sense without talking necessarily if you're going to connect? And I think even the people on the dais were scorning about his delivery of his vision. So I don't know. I was really taken by the incoherence, this juxtaposition of this language that he was pushing versus the language that was happening on the beach. So there's something to be said about that. I guess I'd have to read the whole book to get it.
Yeah, it does kind of make you curious. All right, I have Marcia and let's the microphone. Sandy. Wait, right. Marcia, Sandy,
And then,
Judy.
yeah, I wondered like if somebody would bring this up. So, Merle was talking about that arranged marriage when they were like middle schoolers.
Mhm.
But didn't that end in a suicide? I thought there was a suicide there that traumatized him.
There might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, and getting back to what Izzy said, about, language differentiating. I'm a French major, and I learned, and then I also took a lot of Spanish. I think of Spanish minor. And so, language is culture. You really can't understand another person's culture unless you really know the language. So yeah, so the differences in language is also going to separate people, because it's just like, I grew up understanding and even speaking a lot of Yiddish because my grandma lived with us, and my mom and my maternal grandma spoke it fluently. They read and write it. My mom could write things in Yiddish.
Yeah.
And so when I sometimes a Yiddish word comes to mind, even in my synagogue, so many people know not one word of Yiddish. It's hard for me to relate to that. It's like I say, this is what it means, but you really can't translate it.
Right. They only know the Seinfeld Yiddish.
Right. Anyway,
Yeah, thank you. Sandy, then Judy.
Loved your story about the book about rabbits. But I remember I was in college and we got married, and it was October And my mother said to me after the ceremony at the wedding party, going to our rooms, she took me aside and she said, dear, when you come in, remember October 11th, dear, when you come in for Christmas, I'm gonna take you to my gynecologist and he's gonna teach you what you need to know.
Oh, my God.
Now, I'm married 66 years. Did you learn? My daughter.
Elaine said, did you learn?
66 week ago. So after I was married about 6 weeks, I never made it that time.
Izzy and then Judy.
I'm sorry. I just have this one thing to say. Yiddish. When I grew up, I didn't speak Yiddish. I probably ended up knowing about 50 words. So I decided a few years ago that my 10-year-old grandsons that I should use them. So I wrote down the list and we would go over them. And we just had such a good time. So if any of you want to do that with your grandchildren or whatever, it just makes me feel good, whether they'll remember or not. But it makes me feel good to them.
Yeah.
Lovely. I wanted to bring up something in the story. On the last page, she talks about the fact that he feels horrible, that he's had a good time, she has.
Oh,
And that bothered me. Why would he assume that she didn't have a good time? And then he asks her to marry him. If you have a relationship with another woman, and you don't think she's happy, why are you asking her to get married?
no, I don't think that was it. I think he said, I don't think maybe you were sexually fulfilled. And I think in the 1880s, if you have sex, you get married.
Yeah.
And frankly, up and through the 50s,
Yeah.
what you have sex, you're done. The shop is closed, the cow's got a barn, whatever you want to say about that.
I have a question. How did she become so knowledgeable?
That's a good question.
I mean, she really knew what she was doing and what she wanted.
No, he said that he took her virginity.
Okay.
So
But how did he know?
I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know. I don't know how they knew. Wait, what did you guys say? Alan and Judy, share with the whole class. Wait, you're what? Probably.
I said in disbelief, this naive man said, ooh, the cherry pie.
Nursery school. Okay, we can continue talking, but before people have to leave, I want to say, how did this format work for people? First Zoom people, it was hard, right, Lynn?
I couldn't hear much.
Yeah. Okay.
The people who spoke right into the microphone were the best, but that was
Yeah.
still
Right.
not great.
All right, I have a great idea. I have missed several classes and Vanessa is phenomenal about sending out the tape afterwards.
Sorry, Alice, I turned it on late.
I have enjoyed listening to, I'd rather be here. Can't be here. If you listen to the whole tape, you hear everything.
Yeah.
And it's a great alternative.
Yeah.
I think this is so difficult for her to go back and forth that it's not fair to our teacher. That we need to decide one or
Well,
the other.
we do need to decide one or the other.
I
Now,
personally vote for this one.
all right,
I do too.
right. Right.
But we can agree that if someone wants us to wear a mask, we'll all wear masks.
Sure.
That should alleviate some of the issues.
Can I still tape it? Yeah, I guess it could just, yeah, I think so. Let's just look, now the 20th is right before High Holy Days. So can we meet in person? Well, it's going to be in here. Oh,
I have a short story class that day. Are we doing the first and
third. That's the third.
wait, today? Oh, No, this is the 20th.
Yeah, I
Okay,
said the 20th.
you're right. That's my
Oh, yeah,
route.
you're right. All right, I'm gonna need to talk, if the library's empty, so the 20th, we might have to be online if they're already set up here. And then, then we'll go. I did. Oh, that was so smart of me to say that in the email.
Wait, this is the 20th, right, Vanessa?
Yes, the
September?
20th,
Okay.
and the chairs might be already set up. Now, we couldn't have the library because it's a staging area. And the library, I think, would be better, and you could hear one another. The Montessori has every classroom.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
What? Go, so if you haven't gotten your tickets, go look at the library. It's full of stuff. Yes, you can go get your tickets today. Yes, Marcia. Right, Marcia lives in Arizona. Wait, use the microphone because I can't hear you.
But, I just want to thank you, I love coming back and seeing people that I know.
Yeah, thanks for coming in person today, Marcia. Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, and also through the pandemic, I do a lot of classes, tourist studies, services now in person at my synagogue, but all through the pandemic, I had both my Arizona and
Yeah.
and sold out legacy
Right.
to keep doing, and it's been a god.
Right.
So thank you guys.
Thank you. I'd also say if we do have some snowbirds that maybe over the winter time, we can go online and then be back in person for the good weather. So watch for your emails, and I will be in touch with everybody. Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna let you. Yeah, the 20.